Hi, Gemini Sun and Rising. Welcome to your March 2025 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, this is a month that has a lot going on. It's not just a lot of major aspects, but also types of aspects. Like you got like a couple of eclipses, and then you have a couple of retrogrades, and a generational planet going into a new sign. So that is really monumental. And we'll have to see, if it shakes out the way it's supposed to. But it certainly looks on paper like it's going to be a big deal. So as we enter the month of March, we're in Pisces season, obviously. The sun is in Pisces. And for Gemini, Pisces is your 10th house of career. So, right off the bat, every time in late February to late March, Pisces people have the sun in their 10th house. Now, the sun is a very important, you could say the most important personal planet, and it's in the 10th house. So this can be a very powerhouse type of time career wise for you every year. But this year we have so much more that's going on, both in Pisces and in Aries. On the first of the month, Venus goes retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries. So we're looking at the 11th house here. And this is a 60-degree angle called a sextile, and it's a favorable one for you because Aries is a sign that is favorable for you. And it's Venus in the 11th house can have something to do with your earnings because the 11th house is in part your gains, and that means your career earnings or your business earnings. And so when Venus goes retrograde here, there can be different themes. First of all, it can be that you might experience like a very short slowdown of your gains because of the connection with money that Venus has. But on a higher level, this can be about your values. Venus can be about your or I should say what you value, because it kind of seems like ethical, and it's really not that. Your ethics, it would be more like Jupiter, okay? So um, this is more about like what in life is important to you. And when we're talking about the 11th house, and if we are talking about your earnings, there could be, if you are in a type of career that is very lucrative or relatively lucrative compared to other professions, or, we can say jobs too, even though that's more like sixth house, but just like, what you consider your career. Um, there may be other things competing with that. An example would be if, let's say, a woman, just because women give birth, but it could be, a man by extension, but a woman is, let's say she's in her early 30s and she's in a career that's pretty lucrative, and yet she really has a strong desire for a family. Maybe she's met the love of her life, and she really is starting to feel those maternal yearnings. And yet, she's very tempted by the financial angle. This could be that retrograde and what that means. Like, what is the true value in your life? And it can be scary because so much emphasis is placed on money in our society. And if you have something that's not really monetized, like being a stay-at-home parent, or maybe you want to volunteer, there's some kind of a thing that you want to do that's altruistic, that doesn't, that like maybe you want to do Habitat for Humanity and you just have this really strong desire to do something or join the Peace Corps or something. Those kinds of things can be quite a challenge, because there's such a strong pull with the financial thing. So that's the thing that really comes to mind. But it's also the House of Hopes and Wishes, and that's kind of a similar vein because um, Venus is like, what do you value? What are the things that you hope for, that you want to? But it's not just like career. In life, we have other things that we want, so kind of like sorting that out is very important. And this might be the time for that. On the 3rd, Mercury goes into Aries. Again, you're going to see that I'm going to say Aries, Aries, Aries. So this is going to be that house. This is also the house of friendships and groups. So Mercury here can be that you're contacting friends, or maybe you're contacting them for like even career matters, like networking, like who do I know? Or if you've started a business and you're going to like just take advantage of the people that you know first and foremost, that could be what you're doing. Or just for some people, it could be like you finally have time to, touch base with friends. Maybe you've been very busy lately and now you have like some downtime. On the 14th, we have a lunar eclipse at almost 24 degrees of Virgo. Virgo is another mutable sign, like Pisces, but it is in the opposite house of, uh, for you, what your 10th house in Pisces represents. So it's the 4th house of home and family that this lunar eclipse is happening. The 4th house, I just say, is the house of home and family. Some people say it's the mother is represented by this house. Some people say the father. We can just generalize it to a parent or maybe even both parents, if you want to put it that way, your family of origin. It can be real estate. It can be your childhood. And I think this is going to be a big one for some of you because a lunar eclipse, this is a water house. Cancer is a water sign, the ruler of this house in astrology. So it's emotional. And this can mean that it's a big release. So if you have had some kind of thing, maybe a trauma, maybe, um, some Gemini, if you're listening to this and your sun is in Gemini, you may have personal planets in Cancer because it's adjacent to Gemini. And even your moon sign can be anything. So if your moon sign is in a water sign, but Cancer in particular is a very sentimental sign. It really, the 4th house deals with the past. So Cancer people or people with Cancer placements tend to have this sentimental quality. But the downside is that some people get trapped in the past and it becomes very hard to be forward moving. Now, Gemini is a masculine sign, and masculine signs, I said earth, I meant air, and fire signs tend to be forward looking. So the Gemini part of you is probably always looking to the next thing. But if you have, the moon in water, especially something like Cancer or, any of those water signs, but if you have inner planets in Cancer, Mercury, whatever, you can be very aware of the past. And it can be very hard to let go of certain things. And this can help immensely with that. If you have been trying to sell a property, maybe this will be the time when it finally just goes through. or buying something. There's like a release, but it can be a release of resistance. So it could be something that is going to bring something forward for you. On the 15th, which is the very next day, so you can see that these things are bam, bam, bam. Mercury goes retrograde. Mercury is your ruler, so that makes it more important for you. Mercury goes retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries. Look at these degrees. This is the same degree as the solar eclipse will be later in the month. And, the Venus retrograde is at 10 degrees in that 11th house. By the way, a Venus retrograde can be somebody comes back into your life that was kind of a love interest. And in the 11th house, this could be like, I'm wondering if this could be like a friends with benefits situation. So with that Mercury retrograde in the 11th house, that could double the chances because maybe it is a friends with benefits situation because Mercury can be hearing back from someone, and this is the friendship sector. Sometimes it can be misunderstandings with people in your social circle or with a group that you belong to. Also, great time for a digital detox. The 11th house to me is one of the houses like your house, the third house, Gemini, that is about the internet. So I would imagine the internet is crack for the average Gemini individual. So this may be a great time to, detox from that or break off from it. And as the kids say, touch grass. I still don't know why they always say that because I brought my I go I was going to say I brought my laptop, but my phone to the park too. So I'm touching grass and being on the internet. So it doesn't make much sense to me. On the 20th, we have the astrological new year, and that is supposed to be the real new year. Well, of course, people who follow the lunar calendar would beg to differ. There's different times. I also say when you have the sun cross over into your first house in the natal chart, to look at that as your new year, and the new moon in the first house, if you experience one in a particular year, that could also be considered your new year. But anyway, this is going to be, I don't want to say plagued, but amid some personal planet retrogrades. So to me, it kind of gets a little bit bogged down with that. But I think that when Mercury and Venus go direct by the middle of next month, or talking about April, that we'll be able to really feel those new beginnings a lot stronger. On the 27th, Venus retros back into Pisces, and 2 days later on the 29th, Mercury retros back into Pisces. So this, again, is your 10th house of career. So this is what I'm talking about, where I'm trying to draw a connection in this retrograde motion of like, what are the two houses affected, and can we connect the dots here? So basically what I think, and this can also be regarding your long-range goals, how do they fit into your current reality? And also with Venus, what are your values? And our values can change too, just like our goals. So again, I don't want to get the word value mixed up with ethics, which I would associate with Jupiter. I'm talking about like what you hold dear, what you value, okay? Yeah, there's a word values that means like, it's like morality and ethics and things like that, but I'm not talking about that. So what we value at different cycles in life can be quite different. Somebody who's in their 20s, they may value freedom above all else because they're just starting to kind of experiment with life, and they really want that kind of freedom to be able to, you know, try on different hats. And of course, not all 20 somethings are doing that. Some are raising children in their 20s, and some are buying houses in their, you know, running businesses that make millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. 20 somethings are doing different things, but I'm talking about that stereotypical time of life. So, anyway, you're going to be kind of like looking at career here. And by the way, with Venus retro in the 10th and in the 11th house, you could still see gains financially as well as, um, some kind of benefit from people in authority, in positions of authority. They could still come to you because Venus is a benefic planet, and um, it just rolls that way. So just keep that in mind. And on the same day, the 29th, that Mercury goes back into that 10th house, you have a solar eclipse in the 11th house. And so that can be helpful for creating new ways to increase your earnings. Whether it manifests at this time or maybe like later in, maybe in April, who knows? But it's just happening on that same day. You may expand your social network, and it doesn't have to be for something frivolous like just hanging out. It might be that these are people that could possibly benefit you in some way because Venus retrograded at 10 degrees Aries, very close to that 9 degrees. So there could be a storyline there. Now, what I would say is that at this point, when the solar eclipse happens, Venus is already back into Pisces. So when Venus comes out of its shadow, I think that'll be in I don't know when that's going to be. I think sometime in April. But when that happens, that could be the time when you really see those effects. At least that's my theory. On the 30th, which is the very next day after, Mercury goes back into Pisces into your 10th house and the solar eclipse in the 11th, Neptune goes into that 11th house. And this is significant because Neptune, like Pluto going into Aquarius, or I should say going back into Aquarius in January, these are events that have not happened for hundreds of years. You know what I mean? So this is something to sit up and take notice of because not only doesn't it happen every day, it doesn't even happen every century. So we're going to have several of these generational planets, or at least, I think Uranus goes into Gemini, but it has kind of like half of the transit time of Neptune, but it still is like 7 years or something like that. So it's these outer planets are changing signs, and that really speaks to the collective. But it's Uranus is going into your sign, Gemini, so that's significant on that level. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. What can you expect with Neptune in the 11th house? Well, I think that your friendships may change. They may involve people who are very psychic. And if you're somebody who's like well, we could say an atheist, or you're just not into that kind of stuff. That may change, and it may not change in the way that you think it is. It will. As a matter of fact, I want you to pay attention to this period of time that Neptune will be in Aries. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be there because it is going to go back into Pisces in 2025. I don't know how long it's going to hang out at 0 degrees of Aries. But the point is that when a planet enters a particular house, there can be this, I wouldn't call it a crisis in all cases. It might be with the more challenging planets that it's perceived as a crisis. Neptune is one of those planets that I wouldn't call it, uh, like, I don't know, maybe it is considered like, I was talking about the benefic planets are like Jupiter and Venus, but the malefic planets are like Mars and Saturn and Pluto. I don't know if Neptune is included in this. I highly doubt that, but it does seem to, um, there seem to be a lot of negative comments by astrologers about Neptune. And there are challenging aspects to Neptune for sure. And any transit of Neptune is going to have its pluses and minuses. But I will say that the idea of benefic and malefic planets is a Vedic astrology concept, and I'm not a Vedic astrologer, so I don't really speak in those terms. So one thing that can happen, and I think this is, if you are one of those Gemini people, and you might be if you're listening to an astrology reading, if you are somebody who considers yourself spiritual on the spiritual path, one thing to keep to be on high alert of is any group that you join, because whether it is a spiritual group or a political, like an activist group, be careful, because Neptune can indicate deception. And sometimes you go into something thinking it's one thing and it's really another. Like the person who goes into a cult, or the person who goes into it's an activist group, and they don't realize they're being played by the CIA or something like that. That's the conspiracy realist in me. But the one of the nice things about this is you could find your soul tribe. You could find, Neptune has that connection with the 12th house, with Pisces and past lives. And, people talk about I think that's what they call it, like the soul tribe, their people, or whatever you want to call it. The people, like if you feel like you don't belong, the 11th house is a collective. But, sometimes people feel alone in a group. They don't feel like they really resonate with any group. And I think a lot of starseeds feel like that. And people who are, different in some way, and usually there are spiritual things that they, powers that they possess, or gifts that go along with that feeling of being apart from that. And so that could be a very rewarding experience to have Neptune here. So there's many possibilities that are awaiting you with Neptune. Um, the House of Hopes and Wishes, that could be like, having your dreams come true. Neptune is like the fantasy might become the reality. But also, I really think with Neptune, there's this idealism, and the 11th house is the collective. And I think of the person who they would say in the late 60s and the early 70s, they'd call it a commune, but living collectively with other people. And there is some kind of idealism that is connected to it, that is connected to that Neptunian. Of course, it could be a spiritual community too. But maybe it has those spiritual components. Really, these things already exist, and they talk about the 5D communities or fifth dimension, the the golden age type of societies where we live in harmony with others, and we are all like, maybe we're all growing, we all have this land, and we're all composting and doing all that crunchy granola stuff, recycling and planting, living off the land and all of that. And it's very idyllic. That's very Neptunian. All right, well, that's what I have for you, Gemini. I hope that that resonated. If you would like a private reading, I am promoting my double readings and triple reading. I do have a triple reading. My double reading is called, well, I have a couple, but the one that is the most popular is called my deep dive reading, because it's a double astrology reading, an hour of natal chart analysis and an hour of transits for the upcoming 12 months, whenever those are, when you order a reading. And I've been, recently I've been just like 2025, but now I'm starting to get into 2026. So I'm starting to learn about that year. I don't like to, myself, just out of curiosity, go like 2 years ahead or anything like that. I like to live more in the moment. But when I do these readings, obviously I have to go ahead. And that's for a special price, because you're ordering, those readings separately would be more money. And then I have a combo platter, which is like the transits, or you could get like the natal chart analysis with a tarot reading. And then if you like all three of those, I have that as the whole enchilada. I also have like love readings and career life path readings, and even looking at your child's natal chart to see how you can connect with them more, like understand them better. You can find out more information at the link below. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great month. Bye.